Hello, my name is Lindsay and I'm working on this year's project with Matul. We are going to be modeling the effects leadership development programs have on the generational gap in engineering companies. In today's presentation, we'll be reviewing the context of our model, the problem definition, the time references we chose, stock and flow, the model description, and our path forward from here. So to talk a little bit more about the context of our model, today baby boomers, a generation that is defined as being born between 1946 and 1964, represent almost 20% of the United States population. By 2031, the average age of a baby boomer will be around 65, which is the assumed retirement age of workers in the United States today. Companies around the country are already experiencing a larger and larger number of open job requisitions with fewer experienced workers to replace the workers that are leaving. This creates a gap with a high demand for specialized workers but less experienced people to fill the roles the previous workers left behind. We are calling this a knowledge gap. According to Pew Research Center, millennials have become the largest generation of the labor force in the United States. The millennial generation is defined to be born between 1981 and 1996. This means the average age of the largest population of workers in 2017 is 31 years old. Therefore, baby boomers, on average, have 30 years more experience than the majority of the workers in the U.S. workforce. So, what our model is trying to solve is how can we help decision makers fully understand if leadership development programs have the ability to close the generational knowledge gap at a faster rate than a typical employee would otherwise be able to. So we are working we have defined our time reference as 30 years. So we're going to be looking at 2010 to 2040, so when the job market's pretty stable, to when almost all of the baby boomers will be considered to retire. Next, I'm going to hand it off to Matul.
Thanks, Lindsay. Right, so here's our causal loop diagram of the model, which is to understand whether or not a leadership development program could close the gap on the amount of experience that is lost through the retirement of experts versus new engineers who are entering the workforce. So there's 4 different loops that we have here. There's 3 reinforcing and there's 1 balancing. The first reinforcing loop is the knowledge transfer program. Second is the hiring loop. The third is the accelerated leadership development program. And finally, the balancing loop is the retirement of the experienced workforce. So here in the center, we have an experienced staff. There are several causal linkages between the veterans who have this knowledge base, which is very valuable to the company, as well as new engineers and the new engineers who happen to make it to the leadership development program. On the next slide, we have the stock and flow diagram. We have 3 stocks here. We have the leadership development employees, the new hires, and the experts. There are flows that are going into them and also flows that are flowing out of them, and some causal linkages in between. We have 4 loops here as well, and we decided upon this stock and flow diagram using what we thought should be modeled in the system and our causal loop diagram with the help of Vensim. So the behavior that we were expecting out of this using Vensim was that the number of experts that would be retiring and or leaving would experience a behavior of exponential growth, as well as a goal-seeking sort of behavior. So that exponential growth would essentially taper off as we approach year 2040. This would be the same case for the amount of new hires that would be hired in to combat the number of experienced experts within the company. And some of those new hires would also, as I mentioned, move into the leadership development program, as long as they're accepted into the program. And we are currently modeled to take in 10% of those new hires. On the next slide, we have a model description. There's, again, 3 stocks: the leadership development employees, the number of new hires, as well as the number of experts. And everything else here is either a constant to initiate a time delay and also some flows. Beyond that, we have equations, the units for each flow, constant, or stock, and the initial variables that we decided upon based on our company that we work for. Right. As far as the preliminary findings, on the left-hand side, the first column, we have the number of experts, and to our original guess on what this behavior was going to look like, it seems like it is what we had expected. The number of experts that were going to be leaving, as well as the number of experts retiring, had somewhat of an exponential, or I should say, it did not have an exponential growth, but it did grow significantly and eventually tapered off. The leader development rate was not as high as we expected in our preliminary findings. If you look into the middle column here on the second plot, we have the development rate of the new hires, and it's 100 people per year, as opposed to the leader development rate, which looks like it's 50 per year, people per year, who are groomed to be the experts. And the number of new hires did grow from 2010 to 2040 at a steady rate. And for our next steps that we had decided upon for our model was to essentially just test the dynamic hypotheses of our model, maybe change some parameters around, or add some variables to better include the parameters that we originally didn't think of prior to developing our first stock and flow diagram and simulating it. The second would be just to test the model behavior, and then third, test the model's response to different policies that we can think of, and finally just document those findings similar to what we've done here in our preliminary stage of our model. Thank you very much.